sometimes, but welcome everyone. My name is Stephanie Gregson. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at CCE, and I oversee the Teaching, Learning, and Leading Center, which houses quite a bit of work. Some of the work that Linda mentioned in the opening keynote around the California Mathematics and California Literacy Networks, our Learning Acceleration Systems grant, and our direct technical assistance work. I'm joined by Dr. Jenny Wright, who's a senior advisor who leads our direct technical assistance work in partnership with myself. And you'll be meeting our other guests shortly too. But thank you for joining us. This is about breaking silos and building brilliance. It's also about common sense that's not always common practice. And so we're going to dive into this journey that we have been on for over 3 years now around breaking silence and building brilliance. We're very excited to share this with you. Next slide, Jenny. This is just a little slide to show you who and what is the CCE. You heard from our executive director, Matt Navo, this morning. We are part of that four-legged stool of the statewide system of support with our county office partners, State Board of Education, California Department of Education, and CCE. We coordinate and facilitate the statewide system of support together. Next slide. So why are we here talking to you about breaking silos and building brilliance? Well, this is about our intensive assistance model. It is something that we did a lot of research over the past 4 years, because one thing that we noticed about our direct technical assistance work is that it was very much centered in the district office. And all of our work in direct technical assistance, we weren't seeing the impact in the classrooms with students and students' learning experience. And we went on a journey together as a team of, okay, why is that? What's happening? Why are we not seeing systems change work going from the district level all the way to the classroom level? Well, there's quite a few reasons. And one of them that we found was teacher voice, lifting up teacher voice, teacher leadership, providing them opportunities to take ownership of how their school is providing learning experiences to their students, and just how they're working together as one team within a school. And so we went on a journey of research to find out, is there any type of model out there around systems change that goes all the way to the classroom? We went all the way to Arkansas to find this model. Yep, Jenny and I in minivans with district superintendents, county superintendents, we drove across Arkansas, and we saw over 8 different schools doing exactly what we wanted to see: teacher leadership, teacher ownership, student ownership, and school sites operating as one voice together. And so we're here to share with you what we did with that learning here in California. Next slide. So this is our intensive assistance model. We worked with 5 districts across California: Fillmore Unified, Inglewood Unified, Madera Unified, Sacramento City Unified, and Vallejo City Unified. So you can see it's across the state. And we had several of those districts that are part of our direct technical assistance work, and 2 of them that were not, because we wanted to see how this looked in both a struggling district and districts that we wanted to be very proactive with. And our purpose was to develop those model schools within each district to build their capacity to improve student outcomes, and to provide a model for the district-wide implementation and partnership for direct technical assistance. So we wanted to create these pockets of brilliance in the district for then the district leadership to utilize those principal leaders and those teacher leaders to teach across the district, to spread and grow this work across the district in a very authentic way. We did this by creating a sustainable focus on learning in every school. That's it. It was a focus on learning for students. So all of those other detractors that did not focus on teaching and learning, these schools built kind of those invisible boundaries of, no, our focus is teaching and learning, and that's what we're going to focus on. And it was a relentless focus on student learning and student results. So we have 8 schools in 5 districts across California. And what that model looked like. So I'm going to just give you a brief overview of what the model looked like because Jenny's going to go into a little bit more specifics. The first year of the model, our teachers and principal leaders were focused on what is it we expect our students to learn? What are those essential standards? They received over 50 days of coaching around how to become a collaborative team, creating a guiding coalition or school site leadership team, and focusing on that cross articulation, cross grade levels, and then up and down vertical articulation around what do we want our students to know and learn based on our California state standards. Kindergartners talk to first grade teachers. What do first graders need to know and learn when they come out of kindergarten? They talk to second grade, they talk to third grade, all of this across all of the grade levels to better understand what each student needed to learn and know when they came out of each grade level. The second year, the coaching was about 30 coaching days, and this is where they focus on how will we know if they've learned what we've taught them? So those common formative assessments and getting guidance around how to create common formative assessments, what a quality assessment looks like, all connected with the standards that they have identified that were the most important for every student to know and learn. And then the third year was about sustainability. How are they going to be able to do all of this work without the coaches? They received about 20 coaching days, every teacher, about 20 coaching days, and they focused on how will we respond when a student has learned, and how will we respond when the student hasn't learned the standard. And that was really about their systems, their school systems, their resource. And we're very excited because Jenny's going to dive in a little bit more to those and show you some impact results as well. So Jenny, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So just to give you an overview, many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with professional learning communities at work. It's grounded in these 4 essential questions. What is it we want kids to know? How will we know if they learned it? What do we do when they haven't learned it? What do we do when they have learned it? The intention of the pilot project was to really deeply engage teachers in their ability to answer these 4 questions when they collaborate. So it provided them that clarity to collaborate on a deeper level to get at our goal of collaboration, which is to talk about student learning, to talk about best instructional practice grounded in the standards that kids need to learn. So here are some of the tenets of those 4 questions and really kind of the process by which the teachers went through to be able to answer these 4 questions. It breaks it down a little more specifically in terms of what you do in order to do each one. So that first question, which is what do we want all students to learn, really starts with that grade level or content level standard. So we start there. The teachers agree upon what the most important standard is that they're going to teach in that unit. They then work together to unpack that standard and they determine what successful student work looks like at the end of that unit. They have to develop then how will we know if they learned it, right? That's when we get into that common formative assessment. So in order to answer question number 2, we have to determine what is the common formative assessment? What is proficiency? For example, if it's successful student work, it could be a benchmark score on the CFA. It could be a writing sample in which it would be a threshold score on a rubric. So as a team, they then set that goal. It could be something like 80% of all kids will score a 3 or higher on the rubric for the project. Then once they decide the common formative assessment and they set their goal, they then work together to determine what instruction will look like to meet that goal of 80% of all students being able to meet that benchmark when they take the assessment. During that phase, they teach, they give the common formative assessment, they individually analyze their own data, and then they collectively analyze and discuss best practices and then make plans to move forward. When it comes to question number three, how will we respond when learning has not occurred? This is now the teachers working together to collaboratively design that tier two intervention. They decide as a team, how will we reteach and re-engage the students who did not meet the threshold or the proficiency mark that we set? And then question number four is we also determine what we are going to do for the students that did meet proficiency already, and how are we going to extend and deepen the learning, and how do we take the standard that we're working on and deepen their learning around it, not just push them on into other grade level standards because they've already mastered it. So it was teaching them to go through essentially this cycle over and over throughout each unit for each of the essential standards that they've identified. During year one of the project, which was 21-22 school year, PACE did a report and an investigation of the schools that were participating and determined these 8 essential school elements of the intensive assistance model. They collected data through empathy interviews. They did observations of the school and the classrooms. They looked at student performance, and they found these 8 essential elements. And I don't need to read them to you. You can all give you a minute to read through those 8. And while you're reading through that, PACE then since year one has been continuing to conduct empathy interviews, look at student performance, engage in observations, and we'll be putting out a final report just around the turn of the new year on all 3 years of the intensive assistance model and the impact that it had in these 5 districts and 8 schools. So now my 2 favorite slides of this presentation, which is some of the impact data of the schools that we have had. In the most recent CASP results, Highland Elementary, which is located in Inglewood Unified, had a 13% increase in their ELA scores and a 10% increase in their math scores in 1 year. Very, very exciting for a school that had historically not performed where they knew their kids could. At Federal Terrace in Vallejo City, their kindergartners, they now have 82% of their kindergartners who are ending the year on grade level in foundational literacy. They are one of the top schools in their district now, whereas before they were in, I want to say, the bottom quarter, bottom third of performance and are now near the top. Harkness Elementary in Sacramento City, 7% increase in ELA last year, 5% increase in math. Sierra Vista Elementary and Madera Unified, they've seen drops in their chronic absenteeism year over year. They've been in the pilot. Their reading scores went from last in the district to fourth in the district. And they were a school that historically teachers didn't want to be at. And when they got put there, they transferred out as soon as they could. And since they've started this project, they not only have not had teachers requesting to leave, but have actually had teachers requesting to transfer into Sierra Vista. Nishimoto Elementary, also Madera Unified, is the first of the 8 schools to receive National Model PLC status and recognition, which is very exciting for them. 80% of their first graders are on benchmark in NWEA, and they've had a 13% increase in their CASP scores over the 3 years of the pilot. Washington Elementary, which is the final school in Madera, the interesting thing about Washington is it is a dual immersion site, is a heritage language school, and they were growing as they were in this pilot. So each year they were in the pilot, they were also adding a grade level's worth of teachers to teach the Spanish portion. So not only were they trying to do something so new as a school, they were also growing at the time. And again, their 6th graders were at the 99 growth percentile in NWEA. Their 5th graders were at the 98th. Their kindergartners are in foundational literacy are over 95%. So even while adding brand new teachers, they continued to improve. Fillmore Middle School, which was the only secondary school in the pilot, last year had 10% growth in math scores from 20 to 30%. So it so exciting to see the impact that this has had on students. More kids learning at higher levels, getting to literacy and numeracy at grade level is exactly where we want. And while these schools obviously have a lot of work still left to do, they are accelerating their growth and achievement at a significantly more accelerated rate than most of their peers across the state of California are doing.
All right, so we've had some lessons learned from this 3-year project, and those were non-negotiables that we learned. I had mentioned previously that we asked for all of the detractors from the district level to be taken away from these school sites so that the school sites could focus just on teaching and learning. That was a non-negotiable. We had met with the principals and the superintendent to have that commitment and agreement, and it was found to be absolutely necessary to focus on the few, focus on teaching and learning. That there were clear expectations of every single person within the school site and the district level of what was needed to support the school sites. Shared understanding of mission, vision, values, and goals. Now, you could say that and like, oh yeah, we have a mission. Oh yeah, we have a vision. And it's probably about 2 paragraphs long, each one. And it's not succinct, concise, student results oriented, and nobody knows what it is. So for this non-negotiable, everybody had to agree on what the mission and vision, values, and goals were. They had to be able to know it intrinsically and then make every decision and action was based on those mission, vision, values, and goals. Because then that means that everyone was operating from the shared understanding as one team. That was absolutely vital from the very beginning of this work. Common learning expectations and assessments for all students. And when I say all, I mean every single student. Alignment of support and messaging from district leadership to school sites. We learned this as a non-negotiable, and in our most successful school sites, you saw absolutely that. There was direct alignment from what was happening at the district level to the classrooms and the school site level. And you'll hear from one of our panel members that will talk about that. And we also had learnings where that didn't always happen, where there wasn't a strong connection between what was happening in the school site and the district level, and that growth didn't happen, which is unfortunate. And we're still working through how to make that better for that district. And so these are the non-negotiables that we learned and were implemented through this 3-year project. Jenny?
So now it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce our two panel members today. We have Keith Derrick, who is currently the Director of Secondary Education in Fillmore Unified. Prior to that, he was the principal at Fillmore High School, who led Fillmore High through the 3 years of the pilot as Fillmore expanded. We also have Amy Jones, who's a program director with Madera County Superintendent of Schools. Prior to joining the county office, Amy spent many years of her professional career in Sanger Unified, who is the first model PLC district in California. She and her team are now intensive assistance model coaches for 6 schools across the county, 3 schools in Madera Unified and 3 schools in Yosemite Unified, who are implementing the intensive assistance model. They are each going to speak about their experiences and their journey with IAM, and then we'll be able to open it up to all of you for some Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith.
Everybody, boy, I look quite a lot younger in that picture. Glad I sent that, Jenny. Jenny, can you move the slide back to the graphic with the not the 4 questions, but the whole sequence? Because I think it's important to kind of leave up there. Yeah, that one. So I just completed my 17th year as a high school principal. I spent 3 at Fillmore High. And so when I came over to Fillmore, I remember in the interview, the superintendent had said, I said, well, we're just going to move into a PLC model and kind of explain the 4 questions. And she was all on board. And then I signed my contract and she says, oh, by the way, your school's on probation for WASC. And then I kind of laughed and said, "Can I have my contract back?" Um, because this is going to be some interesting work. So I was going to dig in on my own, but at the same time, that's the Fillmore Middle School was doing the IMA model that just for the middle school. And about, I don't know, 2 months in, maybe October, 3 or 4 years ago, the superintendent decided to do the work district wide and expand it from the middle school all the way across the district. Well, I had already started the work at the high school on my own because I've led the work at the three other sites I've been a principal at. So my first thought about that whole piece was, oh God, like now I'm going to have all these coaches. I already know how to do the work. I'm a grizzled old veteran. What do I need help for? And uh, then the coaches showed up, and what a pleasure to have someone to talk to. Being a high school principal, being a principal in general is pretty lonely spot to be in. And so that's really, and so what we did in our first year district wide is we really dug in with our coaches. We had PLC coaches to talk about the process. And the process is that graphic. What do we want students to learn? How do we know they learned it? What do we do if they don't? What do they do? What do we do if they do? And so our PLC coaches work staff through our guiding coalitions through really setting up the system in place. I call it like the guardrails to everything that you do. So we had to get our essential standards. We had to start writing CFAs. We had to write SMART goals. We had to come up with unit plans. So our PLC coaches had worked us through all those pieces in all departments to get us to that spot. And then we had to make a decision to get to questions 3 and 4, which is what do we do if kids aren't learning? So we have the essentials. And now we wrote CFAs, common formative assessments, and we find out 20% of the kids got it right. Uh-oh. So what are we going to do? So in the first year, most of the schools in our district tried to really focus on answering question 3. At the high school, what we did is we developed a 45-minute intervention/extension period, 4 days a week built into the school day. Every teacher had to be part of that. So we don't intervene before school and we don't intervene after school. We intervene during school. So we put that in place for the second year. The middle school put it in place at the end of every period. They keep their kids for something called win time for 20 minutes. So if the kids are blowing out on standards, they can get their intervention during that time. So that was year 1. Year 2, we brought in content coaches to really start looking at instruction and what content looks like in ELA and math. And so that was kind of year 2. And then year 3 for us was getting really into assessment writing. And so it was really thoughtful process to go through to kind of bring us there. And we did it district wide. And in Q&A, you can ask all the questions that you want. But my caution is when you start this work, you can sometimes just live in questions 1 and 2, which is what do we want students to learn? Oh, let's break down our essential standards and let's unwrap them and let's create unit plans and unit maps. And then you go, okay, well, now we have all this good stuff. What do we do? How do we know they learned it? Oh, we got to write common formative assessments. And so we write all those assessments. And that's a lot of grunt work that you're really putting in. The key is a lot of schools get stuck in 1 and 2, and they never get to analyzing the data and getting to questions 3 and 4. What do we do if kids don't do well on those common formative assessments, and really setting up a system? So my caution to you is just be aware, and it's quite natural for teachers to really get stuck in questions 1 and 2. Let's tinker with the CFA again. Let's reevaluate our essential standards. And they never get to that last box on the right-hand side of how do we know we learn it, analyze data, discuss best practices and learning results based on it. What do we do when we get to that point? And I've been in a lot of schools that get stuck, and you kind of got to get unstuck out of that area and get to a spot where I say you got to get to the good stuff. And the good stuff is in questions 3 and 4, and really setting up a system. And so with that, I probably talked too much. Ask me any questions we're done and we can kind of free it over to you.
All right, Amy, do you want to share your story?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Jones, and there are some familiar faces in the room, so happy to see all of you. My lens is definitely a little bit different, being that I work from a county office and I don't have really the authority, nor does my team, to make the district decisions. Ours is more from a coaching lens. And how we got started in this work was that we were invited by CCEE into learning a little bit more about the IAM project, the intensive assistant model. And from there, we developed a team here at the county office. We all agreed that we all knew a little bit about our years of doing this work. It was called different things and we had pieces of it, but we wanted to learn. There's about 5 of us here at the county office that I work with, so it's not just me alone. But we have come together to really create our own community for learning on how to engage in this work. And we work with 2 districts. One, and they are very, very different. Madera, who you've learned a little bit about, they're a very large district doing big work with lots of initiatives and lots of resources and support. Yosemite Unified is a district in our eastern Madera County, and they are much smaller. They do not get a lot of funding, and so their needs and their demographics and their culture is very different. Where one has just a deep rooted understanding with curriculum and instruction, that being Madera, and even divisions and curriculum people and district coaches to go along with it. Our other district, they don't have those resources. They don't have pacing guides. And so it feels very different. They're also doing things a little bit differently because their need to get involved in this work was a choice, but there were other compelling reasons to do big systems work as well. So there's a little bit of a difference in the why we're engaged in that work, but our team, it's kind of a 3-pronged thing. We're working with 3 guiding coalitions in Madera, 3 guiding coalitions in Yosemite, and then our team is also building our own capacity as we continue to train. And so you see this triangulation between teams and districts, which is its own phenomenon working from the county office in general. I'd say the early stages is where we are definitely at. We started this work in 2024, being introduced to the IAM model. And then we were trained by a consultant ourselves. And Solution Tree is also a big part of our background and our understanding. So there's a lot with that. But right now we are in year 1 with each one of these guiding coalitions. Madera, as Jenny was sharing, they have schools that are much further along in their journey. We picked it up in with working with 3 new schools who are in year 1. With principals that one's a new principal in the district. One is is a veteran principal, and the other one has similar needs as well. And they went about the whole thing with applying to be able to get this sort of support. And then our other district, it was a decision by the district office and our superintendent that they felt the power behind this movement for change would be incredible for them. And so our team we're still training. We continue to build our capacity. We're several steps ahead of them. We have our own experiences. We are really focusing. If you look back at the slide deck, we are really working on foundations right now and have finished that up. As you can imagine, our team working with 6 different guiding coalitions who are in 6 different, very different places. Some moving a little bit quicker, some needing a little bit more time, because what we have noticed is that there are struggles. There's one thing that you can say about the plan, and a flow chart is beautiful, but when you put this into action with flesh and blood people with different needs and with different just capacities, teams that are doing the work, it can slow down tremendously and different things boil up. And so we do a lot of culture work, and that's where your foundations come in that we were talking about, is building that mission, really making sure that we have a vision, that we've also created those collective commitments, and that we're creating those goals. And that has actually taken us quite a bit of time, because it's one thing for the guiding coalitions to create that and understand that for themselves as they are building their capacity, but then to take it out to their staffs. And that's not just about the principal, as important as the principal and the admin is in the process in being able to make sure that this is all getting done. It really is your guiding coalition coming together to be able to bring it back out to the staff and use them as coaches and trainers as well. And we know that it's an accordion style of professional development. That's how we're using it, is they're going out to their teams, they're bringing it back, they're bringing information and data back to the guiding coalition, working together as a guiding coalition to really look at data, to really understand impact, and then to go back out and figure out where the needs are, whether it's professional development or capacity building or resources, whatever it is, being able to really train our guiding coalitions to behave that way. It does take time. So we are taking our, we've been focused on that. We are now getting ready to move into more of where this slide will take us in determining our essential standards and teaching the guiding coalition, number one, how to look at those progressions to understand what is below and what is above, so that they can begin to think about what teaming and what conversations would look like. And then there's the unpacking. Madera Unified does this work really well. They obviously have coaches and resources and the capacity to do some of that work. In our other district, we're having to really kind of take it all the way back and start from the beginning and really introduce these kinds of practices so that we can get those grounded and that they can also utilize their mission, vision, collective commitments to drive that work. Because a lot of them, this is what I'm seeing in almost all of our guiding coalitions, they want to go really fast into the technical stuff. Now, what happens is, yes, we get into the technical stuff, but things begin to boil up. We don't see eye to eye. Maybe there's some culture things going on, or maybe there's some fundamentalists, as Dr. Mohammed refers to. There's some resistance in getting this work moving forward. And so we have to slow down and make sure, do we know what our collective commitments are? And that has probably been the biggest piece to really create this movement, the system change. Because without that piece going right into the technical, we're just driven to go back and talk about mission and vision, collective commitments anyways. And when we talk about vision, it's really helping them to see who they want to become in the short term and the long term. And then when we talk about collective commitments, it's really about, have we agreed on the behaviors of the adults, the adult behavior? How are we going to behave in order to achieve our vision? And how are we living out our mission, which is this in Madera County, is that every child deserves access to high levels of learning, every single child, and also through that lens of equity, and making sure that we are looking at all of our students, all of our subgroups, those who have even historically have been marginalized, all of them, and really helping our teachers to see the needs through this lens. So that has been a really important piece. We are early in our journey. There have been some critical turning points that we are excited to report. As you've seen with Madera Unified, even though they have a model school and they have promising practices in 2 other schools, they had not yet developed a district guiding coalition. And so we have, I think, 9 schools are engaged in this work. Just was it last week? Last week was our first district guiding coalition meeting. And so we are really excited to say that there has been a turning point from a district perspective, and then seeing that switch and that shift from the top leaders after also going to some institutes has been incredible. And then in Yosemite, seeing principals make decisions and have agency to make go before their leaders and say, this isn't working, we need to do it this way, here's the proposal. And then to have that assistant superintendent and a superintendent go, yes, they're owning it. That means that this is not just coming from the top down, but that we're in this work together. So we've been doing this for about 6 months, and those are huge wins because there's a lot of humans involved in this work, and getting everybody to work together and to collaborate deeply, interdependently, has been a heavy lift, but we're seeing some of the excitement and the depth of our conversations. And so now we're actually getting ready to engage in the technical work of essential standards. Whew. And so that's where we're at, guys.
Hey, Jenny, can I jump in real quick? Something
Please.
struck me, Amy, where you said like the guiding coalition getting stuck on technical stuff. That's kind of what I was talking about with the questions 1 and 2. And I think what you find after a couple years, if you start this work, is the guiding coalitions will come in of your essentially your teacher leaders, and they're setting up intervention, they're teaching staff about the process, they're looking at bell scheduling, they're doing all this technical work. And then when that work gets kind of done, it's never done, but it's in a good spot. That's where everything starts to shake a little bit, because then you get to the end of that second question. How do we know if they learned it? And it says analyze data, discuss best practices and learning results. Now you get into those waters of, instruction and oh my gosh, only 20% of my kids passed, but 80% from another teacher did. And so the guiding coalitions sometimes like to get stuck in the technical because it's easy. They're wins. They can get it. We can teach the staff. We can walk them through mission, vision, collective commitments. We're all there. And then now we got an RTI set up and we have MTSS going on. And oh, we came up with a bell schedule. And oh, let's train the staff on this. And then you get to questions 3 and 4. What are you going to do with the stuff? And then that's when schools kind of get a little not wonky, but that's when you really need leadership in there. Because the role of that guiding coalition is kind of look at the data and create subcommittees and do all sorts of things with that. And then one other thing I thought of was, and I wrote it down, you said mission and vision. I remember walking my staff at the last school, and it's actually quite funny. I like to use vision statements as 100%. 100% of our kids will, because I think it has some bite to it instead of saying all. And so guiding coalitions leading this mission and vision, and so I got them to use 100%. I mean, sorry, they came up with 100%. And they said 100% of our students are going to graduate with a post-secondary plan and be college and career ready. Okay. I had a teacher actually pause, put her hand up and say, if we say 100% and we don't reach that, won't we get sued? Okay, so and that's kind of funny actually. It's jaw dropping. But if you don't actually set that foundation and really have those discussions, things can go really awry. So she's now all on board. That said teacher now is my RTI coordinator and actually gets kids, 1,000 kids spread across the entire school into classrooms during the high school intervention period. So things can change. So there's a couple